of Duty is so bad. Call of Duty is so f***ing atrocious.
Okay, get me out! I'm not playing the f***ing game no more. I'm really not.
This shit. I came in this f***ing room and everything went f***ing bad. This shit, man.
With many streamers, pros, and fans quitting Call of Duty in the past month, it looks like this year is going to be the time of death for everyone's favorite first-person shooter. Or is it? The more than 20-year-old franchise has had some great years and some, not so great years. If anything, it's impressive that people still play the game even after so long.
Yeah, sort of says shoot people on the other tables.
To understand their secret, I've spent hundreds of hours playing every major title for research, since the beginning. The revelation that I found is just mind-blowing. The truth is, Call of Duty should be dead by now, but the reason why it's unkillable is way more complicated than you probably think. Let's start from the beginning. No, not that one, the actual beginning. The year was 2002, and the World War II nostalgia was at an all-time high. Around this time, two young developers, Jason West and Vince Zampella, thought of a way to take that fever to new heights, while earning some cash along the way. The pair worked at 2015 Incorporated. It was a video game developer in Oklahoma, and together with some other 20 brilliant developers, they created Medal of Honor 3, Allied Assault, for Electronic Arts, or, EA. It was immersive, and it was beautiful. Well, for a game made in 2002, but, it lacked something, and something 2015 Incorporated, with its strict management, wasn't quite ready for. So Jason and Vince plotted an escape. Medal of Honor 3 was really good, so good that Jason and Vince were confident that EA would welcome them with open arms if they ever pitched a better game. So they left 2015 Incorporated to create their own team, Infinity Ward. Unknown to Vince and Jason, EA already had plans to keep development of the next Medal of Honor in-house, so when they came up with their fresh name, brand, and idea, they were shot down and they were rejected. In desperation, they signed an agreement with Activision and its CEO Bobby Kotick. Bobby would pay $1.5 million for a 30% stake at Infinity Ward, and their games would be released under Activision. It's a solid plan. The Medal of Honor game belonged to EA, so the team came up with a new name that would send shockwaves throughout the gaming and entertainment industry, and it was called Shoot, Kill, Bam, Bam. And then it was changed to Call of Duty. Jason and Vince released the first Call of Duty in 2003. With this game, Infinity Ward had more creative control than they did with Medal of Honor, and they showed EA what they was missing. Infinity Ward created a unique game free from corporate influence. It was a game for gamers, by gamers. This, in my opinion, was what basically first made the game so loved and cherished. The purpose was to create a game solely for entertainment purposes, to relieve stress and to just have a good time.
Okay, go!
Now, the team didn't reinvent the wheel or anything like that. No, what they did was a lot more subtle. They smoothened the pixelated edges, they told a better story, and they added even more subtle details that made gamers just go crazy back in 2003. There were no paywalls, no ads, you just had to buy the game. Because, Vince, Jason, and Activision kind of had to eat too. So what made Call of Duty stand out was not the grand scripted events or the explosions that littered every other first-person shooter in 2003. No, it was the attention to the little details that added credibility to the experience. Warlike music playing on the radio, enemy soldiers engaging in a game of checkers, and casual conversations between squad members, which just made it feel like you were part of a well-thought-out movie, basically. Unlike the Medal of Honor games, in Call of Duty, you didn't play as a solitary hero, but rather as part of a supportive infantry squad. The developers also made the bold choice of breaking away from a single narrative. While other games followed a heroic soldier's journey, Call of Duty presented a bit of a genuine view of war. The men who fought in World War II, they were heroes, but they were not invincible. By focusing on multiple perspectives and theaters of war, the game paid homage to millions who fought and died during it. This approach allowed them to showcase the American battle through France, British advance on Germany, and the Soviet resistance on the Eastern Front. Like a Hollywood blockbuster, Call of Duty delivered the most exhilarating moments of the war, skipping the slower, less engaging parts. And that aesthetic made Activision's Call of Duty a hit from the get-go. The team followed the initial release with an expansion pack that had a new campaign, the ability to sprint, and my personal favorite, the ability to cook grenades before tossing them. It also had 3 new multiplayer modes. You got Domination, Base Assault, and Capture the Flag. By 2005, Infinity Ward was ready to release a second Call of Duty that would change the franchise, but in many ways signaled the beginning of the end. For Call of Duty 2, Infinity Ward wanted to punish EA's initial rejection even more. They were responsible for creating their biggest rival, Medal of Honor, and they sought to destroy it. Infinity Ward knew their selling point was their gritty action, their subtle details, and sticking to the theme, so they doubled down on all 3. They used a new and better engine and released the second title, Call of Duty Finest Hour. And it was great. Every creator tries to make their latest content better than the first, and Infinity Ward just nailed that with Call of Duty 2. The environments were more immersive, there was dirt, smoke, fog, and dust, and they all came alive on our screens for the time period. Again, kind of just goes without saying at this point, but these weren't just for war aesthetics. A well-timed smoke grenade could change the course of the game, and it was important to besting certain enemies or doing good. Always looking to go over and beyond, Infinity Ward also added Team Deathmatch. They had to capture the flag, and my favorite, Search and Destroy, in Call of Duty 2's multiplayer. The back-to-back exciting games gave the public the impression that the guys behind Call of Duty were able to innovate and continually improve with every new title, give a reason to buy that next title. They also got a lot of respect in the first-person shooter genre, and things couldn't be better for Infinity Ward and Activision. But there's no great story without conflict, and Call of Duty's first conflict came with a new generation of consoles about to hit the markets. Making the Call of Duty games takes a lot of time, effort, and, well, people. The first Call of Duty was only available on PC, so when Activision decided to release the game for consoles too, they knew that they had to bring on another team to give Infinity Ward some freedom. That is when Activision created Treyarch Studios, and this decision would carry the franchise in a whole new direction. Treyarch came in and they created the console versions for Call of Duty 2. The game was available on Xbox, PlayStation 2, and GameCube, and Activision were printing money without issue, so what caused the problem is the question. Well, as CEOs tend to do, Bobby Kotick had a secret plan to generate even more money for his company. Treyarch's console Call of Duty wasn't mind-blowing, but it was well received to the delight of Activision, who now had 2 good game development teams. Infinity Ward usually took a year off between games, meaning that they could only release 2 games in 3 years, but with Treyarch in the fray, Activision could release a game every year. An annual release for what was quickly becoming their best, most profitable game? Money, money, money.
Crab 2. First of all, congratulations, Mr. Krabs.
Hello, I like money.
Somewhere in between all these, Activision acquired all of Infinity Ward from West and Zampella. And that meant that they had to meet whatever demands their new owners had, no matter what. Call of Duty 3 was released the following year, and this time Treyarch had the title all to themselves, but they didn't really do much with it except create a feud with Infinity Ward, who didn't really buy the idea of a whole different set of guys working on their game. Call of Duty 3 did numbers, but almost no one remembers it because it wasn't nearly as good as what came out before and what was to come. It became a turf war, as both development teams wanted to show that they were better. But this kind of competition is good, as Infinity Ward wasn't just competing with EA and other first-person shooters like Wolfenstein. They were also competing within themselves with Treyarch. Well, it's not technically within themselves, but you get what I'm saying. Call of Duty 3 wasn't as innovative as its predecessors, but it heralded a theme that we would continue to see over the years. A wave-like rise and fall in the quality of the franchise's games. Infinity Ward pulled all the stops the following year to create what is still regarded by many as the best Call of Duty ever. Battlefield, Wolfenstein, Medal of Honor, and every other first-person shooter game had rinsed and repeated the most thrilling bits of World War II, so Infinity Ward had to switch things up. So they had 2 options. The first was to make their game modern, and the second was to go full-on sci-fi and into the future, which would be something like 2024. Right now, it's no secret what direction they went, but back then, not even Activision executives knew what Infinity Ward's next game was about to be until it hit the market. They were still mad about Call of Duty 3. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare was released on the 5th of November 2007. The team had taken a massive bet, and boy did that pay off. No one, not even Jason and Zampella, could have imagined how successful Call of Duty would be. As you'd expect, some fans weren't happy about the sharp change, but Infinity Ward did not care. They made a decision, and they stuck with it, thankfully. They wouldn't need those fans, as Call of Duty 4 sold over 30 million copies. Gamers and non-gamers could not get enough.
There's a truck coming. We'll use it as cover. Keep moving.
Call of Duty 4 was so good that it redefined the first-person shooter genre. It appealed to the nerdy, esport-esque gamers and casual gamers too. Anyone could pick up the game. They could learn the controls and enjoy it pretty much immediately. What was it about Call of Duty 4 that made it so good? Well, my friend, simply put, everything. You can try and break it down piece by piece, but we just think that the stars aligned for its release. The timing was perfect, the game had a fresh look, and there were all these new details that players didn't even know they needed, like create a class, new game modes, a progression system, kill streaks, and every other detail that made Modern Warfare an unforgettable experience. Instead of creating a full-scale, multi-front World War setting, Infinity Ward shifted their approach to focus on single narrative threads centered on espionage. They still maintained multiple perspectives, but concentrated them into one neatly tied-up story. In the first mission after training, the player would land on a cargo ship during a heavy rainstorm, which was Infinity Ward's way of showing off their new engine. This exposure to realistic weather and lighting was entirely new, and if you're like me, I started feeling that intensity immediately. And the icing on the cake was seeing that ship sink and watching the soldiers swim for their lives in the most realistic water effects that I personally had seen up until that point. Remember, this was 2007. And if you came for the campaign, you and your buddies would be staying for another 5 years for the incredible multiplayer.
To play, and well, Phantasmagoria, the more favorite.
The game shot Call of Duty to the esports scene, and it erupted into a full-on competition as gamers from around the world wanted to know who was the best at this incredible first-person shooter. Luckily, around the same time West and Zampella were starting Call of Duty, Sundance DeGiovanni and Mike Stepso were busy with Major League Gaming and GameBattles.com. Fast forward 5 years into the future, and both would combine to form the foundation of Call of Duty's esports league. Modern Warfare's multiplayer was the game, while Major League Gaming gave the tools competitive players needed to set up real-life battles against one another. One thing led to another, and the first MLG COD National Championship popped up in 2008, with players battling against one another for a grand prize of $8,000.
He's going for the M16. It's taking some fire, it looked like, from Stainville, so now it's Sidrock and Stainville.
With Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Infinity Ward sealed their place as the A-team for all things Call of Duty, with Treyarch coming a distant second. It was a tough ask for anyone to follow Modern Warfare, but you know, Treyarch got a job to do. There's just one problem. Remember, no one, not even Treyarch, knew about Modern Warfare, so it was a bit weird when, keeping in theme, Treyarch released another World War II game, Call of Duty World at War. Sure, I said the World War II scene had been overplayed, but Treyarch did pretty good with this one. They explored a new setting, the Pacific Theater, and with it came fresh environments and new combat situations. Treyarch actually did improve Infinity Ward's game engine. They reintroduced flamethrowers and they added realistic fire spreading. They also used a better physics engine for more realistic environmental destruction, but it just wasn't enough. They still had one trick up their sleeves that would get them much-needed respect in the first-person shooter genre. When Treyarch's team found out about Modern Warfare 4, they knew that they had to do something to compensate for their wild miscalculation. So they threw in a zombie mode as a last-minute addition to the game, in hopes that it would appeal to the more gory fans, or people who thought shooting other humans was a bit too much. The zombie mode mixed a survival horror feel with the series' fast-paced shooting action, a wave shooter. Many zombies attacked at once, forcing players to defend their spot for as long as they could. Who would have thought that that was going to be as big as it was? What started as a one-map mode quickly became a fan favorite, and it grew with extra content. It would also become a recurring mode in future Call of Duty games as Treyarch and fans found new ways to make the wacky mode endlessly fun get to Wave 40. Cool guns, weird and horrifying zombies, insanely graphic creatures, and zombie mode got me off my seat, and I imagine many other players had that same reaction. Aside from zombies mode, this Call of Duty also had a decent campaign with a multiplayer mode that is still praised as one of the best World War II multiplayers in the franchise, but it didn't appeal to many in the esports scene.
Alright, we got the boys here together. Find a gun, because this is going to be a tough mission on Hardened.
Damn it, someone took my Duran.
Hardened difficult.
And that's why, even in 2009, the National Championship stuck with Modern Warfare as the competition's game. Now, World at War was not nearly as big of a hit as Modern Warfare, but it didn't hurt the franchise's reputation at all. The Call of Duty name was steadily increasing in popularity, and everything they touched turned to gold, so even Treyarch's miscalculated game sold over 11 million copies. Activision now had 2 successful game developers, and they were in publishing heaven. The competition between Infinity Ward and Treyarch created a divide, and it let Activision serve fans with games set in different periods. In the esports scene, more and more players would join and compete for the prizes that only grew larger and more popular every year. We would get to see some big names that would redefine the competition, the game, and its future. Activision had released a collection of memorable games, and they had sold millions of copies to their FPS, but they were just scratching the surface at that point, and Infinity Ward would now show them the following year. Infinity Ward released Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 in November 2009. Modern Warfare 2 was the perfect continuation of Part 1, and better gameplay, better mechanics, better graphics, more weapon choices, and more maps. Everything was bigger and better. Within 2 months, Activision recorded over $1 billion in sales of the 2009 Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. It exceeded every other sales number the company had ever previously recorded, and while success sounds great, too much of a good thing always causes problems. For Call of Duty, it was going to die from too much success, right, But how is the question there? You see, when the original Modern Warfare was released in 2007, it performed so well that Activision was hungry for a sequel, which is exactly what Jason and Vince wanted. As the game's creators, they demanded more money, including a bonus plan worth tens of millions of dollars. You would too, if people kept demanding your stuff. They also wanted absolute control over the Modern Warfare franchise and its sequels, something I imagine didn't sit well with Activision CEO Bobby Kotick. He felt Jason and Vince were becoming too big to control, so he searched for a way to trigger a loophole he had put in their contracts. In this contract, if Jason and Vince were to be fired for some reason, all rights to Call of Duty would be surrendered to, drumroll please, editor. Editor, anytime now. Okay, thank you. Activision. Activision could get all the rights to their best game and even offload two powerful money-sucking dictators in the process. Their words, not mine. So from there, the situation unfolded like a dramatic lawsuit story. Activision, in a move which they called Project Icebreaker, thank goodness they didn't name it Call of Duty, allegedly instructed employees to find any negative information on Jason and Vince that they could. Activision's former IT director Thomas Fenaday was told by the company's chief legal officer to watch their emails and was even asked to hack their phones and computers. Bobby was so desperate that he even staged a fake fire drill to distract Infinity Ward employees so that investigators could sneak in and copy emails.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Plans to replace the pair, Jason and Vince, were quickly underway, as shown in a late 2009 PowerPoint presentation comparing the salaries of the two and their replacements, Steve Pierce and Steve Akrich. But that pair did not go down without a fight. They tried to stop Activision from giving stock grants to other key Infinity Ward employees, acted rebelliously against Activision executives, and they even threatened to skip a demo for Modern Warfare 2. After the game's release in November 2009, they tried to renegotiate their contracts through Seamus Blackley, proposing that Infinity Ward became independent with Activision as its publisher, and that they would own the games that they made, and if Activision didn't agree, Jason and Vince threatened to stop the development of future Modern Warfare games. But Activision was too far gone, as they say. They refused to negotiate and instead launched an investigation into Infinity Ward in February 2010, claiming possible misconduct. Jason, Vince, and other Infinity Ward employees were interviewed in secret, and they were barred from hiring lawyers or discussing the investigation. In March 2010, Jason and Vince were eventually fired from Infinity Ward, and of course, I expected Call of Duty to die here, but it didn't, and the lawsuit didn't either. Activision claimed Jason and Vince violated their contracts by planning to start an independent studio and slowing down game development, while Jason and Vince filed a $36 million lawsuit against Activision, accusing the company of firing them to avoid paying royalties of the same amount for the success of Modern Warfare 2. The lawsuit grew to $1 billion, and Activision had to respond. I mean, it was all-out war. Activision hired a top lawyer and initially filed a counter-lawsuit, claiming that Jason and Vince conspired with Electronic Arts against the company. In the end, Activision agreed to pay the pair $42 million and settled out of court for tens of millions of dollars. This eventually was seen as a win for Activision since the company had strong financial performance during the quarter thanks to Modern Warfare 2. What they didn't imagine was that almost all of Infinity Ward's staff would follow their leaders out the door. Of course, this spelled doom for the franchise as the original creators were gone. That is certain death, right? What's worse is that West, Zampala, and the rest of their staff went back to Electronic Arts the following month to start Respawn Entertainment. At Respawn, West and Zampala will end up creating even more rivals to another monster they created. How could Call of Duty recover from millions of dollars lost in lawsuits, the exit of its original team of developers, and limited time to release its next game? Who cared? We were all enjoying Modern Warfare 2. Crazy things were happening in the esports scene too, with the new legend rising to glory. With West and Zampella out of the way, Activision now had full control of the Call of Duty games, and it was Treyarch's turn to impress. It was a crucial moment for Treyarch and the Call of Duty franchise, as a real make-or-break moment. Thankfully, they didn't go back to World War II again. Instead, they focused on its aftermath, the Cold War. And they made Call of Duty Black Ops, and it was delightful. The campaign was so good that it brought tears to my eyes, I ain't ashamed to say. The Cold War had never been made into a game before, and as a history buff, dude, the story was just really well written, and it's hard to believe that it all didn't happen somewhere in our mysterious universe. And the multiplayer? A banger. There are new weapons, new kill streaks, wager matches, more customizations to guns and profiles. The game sold over 30 million copies, and to this day, it has a large community of modders and players. Still, again, to this day, even though it came out over a decade ago. The aesthetic of this game has to be commended as well, of course. In my opinion, the looks were just ahead of their time. It had a modern feel to it, but you just knew that what you were doing here was battling with realistic soldiers, realistic gear, call-outs. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. And if that all isn't your cup of tea, then you're like me. You put 300, 400 hours into the game, 90% of which was on the zombie mode, because it was so good. Treyarch were just the masters and the creators of zombie mode, and they made a sick one, arguably the best one. And there was just these clever details that made you play it for hours without realizing it. We would later learn that the icing on the Black Ops cake was the COD points, the in-game currency that wasn't bought with actual money, so it kind of just balanced things out. The more grind, the more work you put in, the more COD points you get. Treyarch finally got it! Yes! The game's success also did wonders for its esports scene. More events were bringing up with bigger cash prizes. It wasn't just a competition anymore. It was a full business with both financial and time investments. Talents were scouted, companies were formed, and the esports scene became a standalone community. The next Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3, was released in 2011. And to improve buy-in and ratings, Activision hosted an esports contest, Call of Duty XP, to showcase Modern Warfare 3. Probably because it was a bad game. The competition was crazy and exhilarating, with the winning team carting home a grand prize of $400,000. There's a big problem, though. The actual creators of the game had left Infinity Ward, and all the drama from 2010 showed in the disaster that was Modern Warfare 3. The smaller Infinity Ward team had to rush the game to meet Activision's lofty goals and deadlines, and that led to an underwhelming result. In truth, what was left of Infinity Ward was an uninspired and a vengeful team. From an article released by PC Gamer in February 2024, one member reported that after firing Jason and Vince, executives of Activision tried convincing other members to stay by flashing wads of cash in their faces. Members that agreed to stay were promised that Modern Warfare 2 bonuses and a 50% increase in their salary if they sucked it up and collected the money. Activision didn't understand that game developers aren't as money-centric as business executives, and the guys that stayed only did so to create a bad game while keeping money. Due to the reduced workforce and time constraints, Activision created a third team, Sledgehammer Games. And that was to help Infinity Ward complete the game. And when it came out, the reviews were, awful. The esports competition only did so much to prevent it from becoming an economic disaster, and the game, while being a repeat of Modern Warfare 2, still finished as one of the best-selling games of that year, which is sad. Almost everything was the same, which led many to believe that it could have just been an expansion pack or downloadable content instead of a full standalone $60 game. Otherwise, it had pretty much everything you'd expect and enjoy from a Call of Duty game. There was a zombie mode, but like other parts of the game, it felt rushed and unfinished. And the campaign was shorter than what we had come to expect as the norm, and many fans were disappointed at the end of a trilogy that started so well. We can imagine that Jason and Vince are just rolling on their plush Respawn Entertainment beds. The icing on that cake was the lack of MLG tournament due to the absence of the LAN feature in the game, a feature which MLG heavily relied on. With Infinity Ward a shadow, a mere fraction of their former selves, and with Modern Warfare 3 doing so badly, fans felt that this was finally the end of Call of Duty. But, once again, it wasn't, as Treyarch would come to the rescue with its next release. Black Ops 2 hit markets in November 2012, and it rode on the success of its predecessor to become one of the most beloved editions of the game. It was a massive hit from opening day, generating over $500 million 24 hours after its release. That is not the sign of a franchise teetering on the brink of death. The campaign was intense, with the story cycling between the past and the future, 2025, so not that far away from now. And it featured characters that fans were familiar with and new ones with clever backstories. To top off its blockbuster campaign, Black Ops 2 had 3 different endings based on decisions that players made in-game, adding a lot more color and a lot more depth to the masterpiece that is Black Ops 2. And of course, the multiplayer mode was equally brilliant, and it ranks high among any first-person shooter that exists, or multiplayer first-person shooter that exists. Graphics were great, maps were awesome, and the guns? Fantastic. This was the first-person shooter game to play, and it easily won the Game of the Year award thanks to its massive multiplayer success.
Call of Duty Black Ops 2.
Treyarch excelled once again with its zombie mode, and most people didn't mind coughing up an extra $15 for DLCs and map packs. Black Ops 2 didn't just make up for Modern Warfare 3's modest performance, it entered legendary status as one of the best in the business. This directly translated to some of the most fierce battles in esports history, and the start of many great rivalries. It was also after the release of Black Ops 2 that Activision decided to start hosting the annual Call of Duty Championships in a bid to strengthen its place in the esports scene and the success of its annual releases. If players were always looking forward to an annual competition, they would always look forward to the annual game. However, things went pretty bad pretty quick. And if you were waiting for the real downfall of Call of Duty, it came after Black Ops 2, just 3 years after Jason and Vince left the franchise. After Black Ops 2, Activision was now fully aware of the kind of power that they had. Call of Duty wasn't just a game anymore. For guys like Nadeshot, Scump, Rambo, and Merc, to name a few, this was their job, this was their livelihood.
Then a year later, we saw the release of
Songs were written about Call of Duty. Real-life celebrities talked about how much they couldn't go a day without playing it. I mean, it came up in movies. It was a full-on esports league dedicated just to it. And you could say it became a pretty big part of our lives. So, some of the best esports players out there, like Nadeshot and Scump, even went on to start their own YouTube channels, streaming Call of Duty games, and they instantly had huge following and success thanks to Call of Duty. I mean, it made sense, after all. This was a game that both gamers and non-gamers could enjoy. There's almost no one that doesn't enjoy the thrill of a perfectly timed headshot, or the burst of adrenaline that comes with playing team deathmatch, or just deathmatch, if you like your fun raw like that. As masters of the Call of Duty world, Bobby Kotick and Activision felt like gods, that controlled the lives of many, and this was when they got a bit greedy.
Hello, I like money.
The gods, quote-unquote, got greedy, and they plunged millions of players into what we would like to call the dark years. So Black Ops 2 was followed by Call of Duty Ghosts, and things sort of spiraled downward from there, a befitting name for a franchise on the brink of death. If you had any feelings of happiness, delight, excitement, fear, and every other emotion that makes Call of Duty fly off the shelves like crack, not that I know anything about crack, I've only heard it's very addictive, I've only tasted it a couple of times. But from Black Ops 2, Ghosts was the direct opposite of that. Fans hated it. Everybody hated it. The campaign felt like bits and pieces of different stories smooshed into one short and inaccurate cliché story. Just like the campaign, every other part of the game was just dull and repetitive. From the graphics to the gameplay and even to the other modes of the game, everything looked and felt just like it did before. Which is the real sad part. Even though it's hard to find anything spectacular about Ghosts, it still sold stupid well, as is the norm with every Call of Duty game. It will be remembered for ushering Call of Duty fans into the dark years and being that little bit better than Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, just a little bit. With Ghosts, Activision's discovered that they could make a mediocre game and still make so much money off of it, so they spent the next few years discovering new depths of video game mediocrity, and Advanced Warfare would explore depths. Released in November 2014, Advanced Warfare was Call of Duty's first game with the dreadful loot boxes. Activision showed its true colors with this one as it packed as many microtransactions as possible into an already pricey game. You want a gun? No problem, give me $15. You want an attachment? Give me another $15, sweetie. Supply drops? Give me that money. Okay, what if I just want a map? Another $15, scratch that, make that $60. But I already paid $60 for the game. Too bad, so sad, go cry in a corner, goodbye. It's hard to watch, and harder to look away as everyone's favorite game was destroyed by just greed. If paying to win didn't put you off, then Advanced Warfare's advanced movements would have done the trick. While I personally liked the movement mechanics and the rewarding feeling of mastering it, many fans didn't, and they were pretty vocal about that. If you've come across the press F to pay respects meme, then you might understand just how terrible fans thought this game's campaign was. The zombie mode was just as bad, but, it was the monetization. The loot boxes that made Advanced Warfare particularly distasteful, particularly offensive. You should know that it just wasn't Call of Duty doing this, as many other AAA games followed suit. To the horror of many fans, the monetization didn't stop at Advanced Warfare. The next 4 games were also very heavily monetized, and that didn't end until people realized the idea of loot boxes is just gambling with extra steps. The new movement mechanics had nothing on the pros and elites, as the game's esports league was still going strong, with many Halo players switching to the Call of Duty aisle. And the viewership and prize money increased steadily to $1 million for first place. Black Ops 3 was next, and it hit the markets on November 6, 2015. And a lot of fans had high hopes for it after the success of the previous Black Ops games. Surely Activision couldn't go 3 for 3. And they could. And they did. They pretty much had the same problems as Advanced Warfare, but its zombie mode was much better. And if you thought any of the previous games were bad, Infinite Warfare, released in 2016, introduced fans to new levels of low. It was so bad that the game's trailer on YouTube is still 25th place in the list of most disliked videos of all time on the platform. Again, this felt like the end for the franchise, but it somehow managed to hit respectable sales numbers. The game just wouldn't be killed, and with all the stuff Activision pulled in 2015, they were begging for Call of Duty's death. But how? After the disgraceful 4 million dislikes on YouTube, Activision decided to tack on a remastered version of Call of Duty 4 to the deluxe edition of Infinite Warfare to give the game a fighting chance. It worked, and it was met with a lot of excitement until it was revealed that you had to pay an extra, guess what, for $80 just to get it. That was the last nail in the coffin for Infinite Warfare, but still, it did numbers. The truth is, the game wasn't as terrible as most reviews would like you to believe. I mean, if anything, it was just bad luck, poor timing, and general laziness. For a fan base that loved first-person shooters, that were more grounded in World War II-like, Infinite Warfare had a lot of jumping, wall climbing, sci-fi, and even superpowers, specialists. The last few editions of the game had been heading in a very unrealistic direction, and fans were hoping for something a bit more simple, a bit closer to the old-fashioned Call of Duty that they'd gotten, grown up loving, like regular soldiers tackling somewhat regular problems. Now it kind of just felt like Star Wars without the lightsabers. Not that I don't like Star Wars. I like oranges, but sometimes I'm in the mood for apples, and not an orange, you know what I mean? So expectations were pretty low for Infinite Warfare's campaign after the shit show. Sorry, they'll probably bleep that out, right? After the shit show in the last 3. So, it just didn't impress. The game's multiplayer was highly controversial because of skill-based matchmaking, advanced movement, loot boxes, and all the things that fans hated about the dark years. Once again, the zombie mode was decent, but it wasn't Black Ops 3 level, so who really cares? In the esports scene, Activision made the big move to buy MLG, particularly for its streaming platform, MLG TV. Activision's acquisition came with an age restriction rule that prevented some already established names in the Call of Duty esports scene from competing. It upset a lot of players that were affected by it, but Activision brought more balance and stability to that side of things, so there is that, but it's just too bad that they couldn't carry that to their next game in 2017, Call of Duty World War II. Many people felt like the time period was overused and that the game failed to excel in any one mode. The best titles in the franchise delivered 1 or 2 excellent modes that you could grind at for days and not get tired of, and World War II it lacked all of that. With World War II, Activision committed one of the 3 great sins of AAA games: pandering. After Jason and Vince left the creation team, they seemed to have run out of ideas, and so they looked for the community on what to do next. World War II was made to please fans and the Call of Duty social community who felt like things had become a bit too futuristic. The game had deviated from its initial identity so much that it was now lost. In World War II, Treyarch removed sliding and they made a weird zombie mode, one of the worst in the franchise's history, and it scared a lot of fans away, never to return to the once creative and compelling mode. The drastic changes that came with World War II affected many Call of Duty esports teams, as the game was much slower and much more tactical than what they were used to. It'll take months before many of its pro players would get into the game's groove, leading to backlash and boycotting from many players. Fans didn't know what to expect from the annual releases anymore. This was only the tip of the iceberg, as things would just get worse and worse for the franchise. The next game was Black Ops 4. And just when I thought that we had been through the toughest times, Treyarch removed the offline campaign, the backbone of the entire Call of Duty franchise. Why was it even called Black Ops 4, There's no continuation, no correlation to Black Ops 3's storyline. It's almost like the only reason that they called it Black Ops 4 was so they could release an incomplete game and still charge full price. But they won't do that, right? Their excuse was that no one was playing the campaigns anymore. At least they made up for it with Blackout, that had blacked out faster than you can say Call of Duty Warzone. Black Ops 4 was released in 2018, and gamers had so many more exciting options to choose from. There's Battlefield 5, Far Cry 5, Mother Gunship, Wolfenstein 2, PUBG, and the new upcoming little Battle Royale featured in 2017, Fortnite. Don't know if you heard of it. And this new competition threatened to push Call of Duty to extinction and finally bury it. But it actually had a bit of a different effect. Pushed to the edge, Call of Duty went to its roots, and they developed a killer game for the following year. They first released a Call of Duty Mobile that was PUBG-esque, but with Call of Duty aesthetics. And then they released the big one. A reboot of Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and it was insane. They were on the money for every part of this game. Not only did it take many fans to a time when the original Modern Warfare was released, but the gameplay, mechanics, aesthetics, color, everything and anything was fresh, more realistic and on point. Just when I thought that they couldn't make it any better, Infinity Ward released Warzone, Call of Duty's Modern Warfare Battle Royale. Wait, did I say that right? And it was released at a time when the whole world was playing video games, in 2020. Safe to say that the stars were aligned for this one again. Call of Duty had risen from the dead again. Warzone is everywhere, printing money. Almost no one cared that it had a download size of over 200 gigabytes. It's free to play, and it was out of this world. You could spend all day grinding on Warzone with your buddies, and everyone was happy in the kingdom of Call of Duty. Treyarch followed this high with another Black Ops, but this time they called it Cold War. It was decent, but we're not going to praise a fish for swimming, you know? Sledgehammer Games then released Call of Duty Vanguard in 2022, and I realized that we should have praised the Cold War fish. Call of Duty Vanguard is another World War II game. Like the world desperately needed more World War II games. Even though Treyarch supposedly worked on the zombie mode with them, it was really hard to like anything about Vanguard. It was almost like a bitter reminder of the dark years we as fans had to endure to get to the Modern Warfare reboot in Warzone. The campaign was short, had no iconic missions, and very forgettable characters. I played it not that long ago, and I can't remember anyone's name. It also got way too fast compared with the Modern Warfare reboot, and I didn't like that. You know, modern movement was fast, and time to kill was fast, and Vanguard quickly became the most hated Call of Duty. In a bid to please the fans, again, more pandering, Infinity Ward made the very next game, Modern Warfare 2, 2022, a lot slower, but players didn't like that either, and I kind of get that. You had to play a lot safer, and it took a lot more time to kill. Like, who survives getting shot that many times, you know? And then the user interface was a bit too complex for most gamers. Not me, not the Giga Chad, big brains, big socks people like me, but for the average Joe. Anyways, for the most part, it wasn't a terrible game. I mean, it came with a new Warzone, and, you know, fans just love Warzone, like, a lot. So, what happened next, I guess? We'll just go there. Well, 2023 came with plenty of drama for Bobby Kotick, and he finally sold Activision for a small price of $70 billion. But does that mean Call of Duty stops being made? No, never. Under new management, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is released in 2023, and it was butt cheeks, dude. It quickly became even more hated than Call of Duty Vanguard, and that is saying something considering how bad Vanguard was. A lot of people hoped that Modern Warfare 3 would be an improvement from Modern Warfare 2, but then they were treated to a poop show. They got so much hate from pros, streamers, and fans that even the original Modern Warfare 3 had caught some misdirected hate as well. First of all, again, history kind of repeated itself, and the entire game could have been an expansion pack for Modern Warfare 2 rather than the $70 standalone game, and that is the least of it. From engagement-optimized matchmaking to cheaters, battle passes, terrible UI, and a disgusting campaign, which they, you know, in spoiler alert, killed soap, Modern Warfare 3 is as bad as a Call of Duty can get. There are tons of videos of very, very upset players voicing their frustrations with the game.
Get me off that f***ing game. And get it off my computer once again. I can't do that, man.
It was so bad that even their sales numbers, which never seemed to go down, were laughably low for Modern Warfare 3. Back-to-back poor game performances have also hurt the esports scene with the reduction in views and interest. The teams just aren't as profitable. They don't make the money that they used to make. With the World Championships of 2022 recording a $2.5 million loss, even after winning the biggest tournament of the year.
I'll put it out there. We lost $2.5 million on our Call of Duty program last year when we were the world champions.
You know, a lot of our partners got their budgets slashed and they're not making as much money, and I think that will rebound. I just feel like everybody wants everyone to fail.
And so, is this finally the end of Call of Duty? I mean, they've shown just how greedy, lazy, and deceitful they can get, but would Call of Duty die for good this time? Because, I mean, it seems like they're pretty sure of themselves that no matter how bad their games will get, people will keep buying them. But is that true? I don't know, but I don't think Call of Duty is going to die. At the end of the day, most gamers don't care about those problems. They just want to keep enjoying the game that they've been liking for 20 years now. Haven't gone a week without thinking about it in some capacity. They're the ones who buy the battle passes, the absurd skins, bundles, and cosmetics that make the game lose every bit of respect that it once commanded. They're like sheep, doing exactly what the game wants them to do, and as long as they exist, the franchise will never die. They could keep recycling the same content or even make World War II games for the next 10 fucking years, and they won't even care. All Activision has to do is stick Call of Duty on it, and boom, 10 million copies sold. Profit achieved. Even with the many complaints players had about Modern Warfare 3, it's still one of the best-selling games of 2024, coming second only to Helldivers 2. I'm not better either. I bought it, I played every game, so I just could make this video for you and act like I didn't have fun doing it. Call of Duty's never gonna die, and I'll retain this position again until next year because we, as fans, will never let it die. As long as Activision keeps releasing the games, we're gonna keep buying them. You look at me. You tell me I'm wrong. You look at your screen right now. We're gonna die clinging to the nostalgia created by Jason and Vince, and the promise of what would come. I would buy it to review it. Some would buy it to stream it. You would buy it to see Nicki Minaj square off with Homelander and Justin Bieber, and others are gonna buy it to see the Ghost of Soap reborn in Call of Duty Soap Wars. I don't mean to get all sad about it, but so, what Call of Duty developer is your favorite? Infinity Ward, Treyarch, or Sledgehammer Games? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then you'd love the next one. And if there is nothing yet, then just subscribe and turn on notifications so that when we do upload in the future, you get notified of it. Because I was pretty sure that you didn't know how the notification bar worked, so I got you. And you know, it's not $70, but it keeps food on my table, so I can keep bringing content like this to yours.
We want the numbers, Mason. That's all we've ever wanted.